Lawyers, which family case bomb still yanks your guts every time you replay the courthouse tapes? Story 1. It's my own history. At the moment, I work for my father, and my younger brother is also in the business. We're a construction firm. I've worked at the company since I was 14, doing office work over the summers all the way through college. After getting my degree and working elsewhere for 7 years, I came back to the family business and for nearly 10 years have been working my way into more and more of a leadership role. My dad is my boss, but he is not a good delegator, manager, or mentor. He is a great project manager and knows the industry like the back of his hand and is good at his job, but very much not a teacher or long-term planner. On paper and sort of by actions, I am his heir apparent. But in reality, I'm just being given a little bit of everything without any ownership over anything, and it's overwhelming. I am now point on some aspect of almost every part of the company. IT, HR, management, accounting, office management, marketing, and on top of that, I keep getting construction projects to manage. I started here as a project manager, and note that none of our other PMs have any other office, admin responsibilities, just me. I keep trying to get out of project management because it's hard to prioritize employee reviews or revamping the website when you're constantly pulled into project issues, which by definition need to take priority because they pay the mortgage. But every time I'm close to finishing out my last project, a really great prospect comes up and we don't have the staff to handle it. So I end up taking it on, and I'm back on the hook for another 9-12 months of PM work taking 50% of my time. Every time we've tried to make a plan for me to take over a specific part of my father's role, or our CFO's role, it just doesn't happen. They can't actually let go. Meanwhile, I'm just getting all the mundane stuff put on my plate, like ordering more laptops or figuring out how to run certain reports in our accounting software. These tasks don't interest me. I want to be big picture. I want to be strategic. We just had a strategic planning retreat 2 months ago, which I organized, pulled together the data and agenda for, and facilitated, all of which I really enjoyed. During that retreat, the decision was made that I would go get some financial training and move towards CFO and out of project management. Last week we landed a new 12-15 month project, and guess who is now the PM? We just hired a new PM. Guess who is supposed to be training and mentoring him? Though I'm not his manager, that's still my dad. I'm so burnt out from the pandemic and trying to figure out how to do my job, what my job even is, and what any sort of pathway towards a job here that I like. Looks like that I've been pretty checked out for the last 2 months. Yesterday, my dad confronted me about that. He asked, "Have you decided construction isn't for you?" It hurt, and I kind of tried to explain everything above, but I'm really close to just saying, yeah, construction isn't for me. I'm out, and blowing up the last 10 years worth of a career I've been trying to build here. It would be so much simpler to be out, but I have a lot of pride in this place. It's basically another family member, and I love that it's an ethical company that supports real careers and puts its employees first. But I haven't been happy here for a while. I loved putting together and running that strategic retreat, but now all that work feels like a waste of time, because we aren't doing anything with it. I feel so stuck, and can't see any way out besides just blowing it up. My relationship with my father and brother would be fine if I left. They would understand. The company would figure it out, or it wouldn't, and my dad would have to sell. I don't know. At some point it's still just a business, not actually a member of the family, right? I know I have skills that would make this place better, but I feel like they are atrophying after years and years of banging my head against a wall and not getting any sort of direction or plan or mentorship from anyone here, and feeling like all my efforts to develop my role here are just me flailing about. My passion for this place is gone. Maybe that's just post-pandemic blues, but I do know I would feel so free if I hit the eject button. I could go back to school, I could find work, volunteer for causes I care about, I could be a more present mum and spouse if I didn't work here. Maybe that's the right path, to separate family and work, and just let the chips fall where they may. Note that my spouse also has a full-on career working 60 hours a week for one of the tech giants, so balancing work and family is really hard with both of us having career-type jobs and small kids. And while my income is great to have, it's not necessary for our financial stability. The same would not be true if we lost my spouse's income. Any advice would be much appreciated. Update 1. A lot has changed, and a lot has not. Ultimately, I'm still with the family construction business, and I suspect I will be for the rest of my career. Two things really hit me after my letter was published. The first being that I didn't really spell out what I like about my job, which you called me out on, so I gave that some thought. On good days, I love my job because I get to problem solve, either internally or on a project. Often, I'm working to understand processes, figure out next steps, facilitate communication and find solutions, and every day is different and full of potential. I also love my company because we're the type of employer I think all employers should strive to be. We're here, yes, to make money, but also to allow our employees to have a career that supports them in the unfolding of their lives. Just the other day, one of our employees thanked me for this being a wonderful place to work, that has supported her through real health issues, and she said she was glad I was starting to take over the reins as the next generation, because she knew I would continue to retain that culture of family. Then, just last night, I attended an awards ceremony where one of our projects was recognized for the historical restoration of a building that was falling apart. This award-winning building is in my neighborhood. It's a place where my family goes to hang out, where I now take my kids for the winter farmers market. It's a building that will be part of my larger community for the next 50+ years, and my company did that work. I feel real, deep satisfaction some days. I really like and respect both my father and my brother, who I work with daily. None of that came through in my letter, and it was really helpful to catalog all that good stuff, because afterwards the hard stuff I was focusing on and wrote you about suddenly loomed less large. I also have to say thanks to all of the advice that came from the commentariat that really helped me look at my situation differently. Specifically, I was really taken aback by their accusations of sexism towards my father. I found myself pretty insulted on his behalf, because he is the person who has steadfastly been my champion. We've had blunt conversations about the dearth of women in construction and why, and he sees what this industry is like, and doesn't think it should be like this. He wants capable people in places of leadership, including capable women. He believes I have the skills and ability to do it. We just haven't been able to figure out how to get me there, get him to let go. Ultimately, the comments made me realize I was doing a lot of this to myself. I was taking on the HR stuff. I was volunteering to pick up the 401k administration, order the laptops, fix the website, move into the financial side of the company. Long story short, I had to ask if I was being the sexist one by taking on all the administrative tasks that needed doing when they didn't feel like actual moves upwards. I personally didn't need to own any of it. I just kept taking it on because someone needed to. Maybe it was internalized sexism, or maybe it was just being bad at delegating, but I finally saw it thanks to you all. So we've since hired a new office manager, director of HR, at my behest, and OMG, yes. This person is worth their weight in gold, and now enjoys doing, and does well all of that administrative stuff I had taken on. The new PM, who I mentioned in the letter, has since started, and I'm training him, which means he's learning to PM the way I want him to, and has been a great addition to our team. And we've also since brought on a vice president of marketing and design, who is potentially going to be our interim CEO, instead of me taking the reins directly from my father. This makes a lot of sense in many ways, not least because he has more experience in the industry and with working as an executive, but also because him taking responsibilities from my father is just less fraught. So, now I'm back to being mostly a project manager, which I enjoy and am good at, with flavors of being a manager. I'm still a leader here. I'm on the board of directors and get to weigh in on decisions and what direction we head. People seek out my advice and ask me to address issues. And while the immediacy of taking over my father's role is gone, it's still very much the long-term plan. Though the plan is more fuzzy than it was, it's on the to-do list, don't worry. In the near term, I need to focus on landing projects so we can pay these new hires that are doing the stuff I don't want to, which seems like a good trade-off to me. Overall, I'm really proud of the moves I had this company make over the last year, and specifically the last couple months, the hires, the new projects, the changes in roles, and the leadership, accountability structures I've put in place. I appreciate the perspective Allison and the commenters gave me. It helped me figure out a way through to the other side during a rough time. Cheers and thanks so much. Update 2. I wrote you way back in 2021, when I was trying to decide whether or not to stay in the family business, and in 2024, I sent you my update. I've since stepped into the role of CEO, for better or worse, and am now facing an ongoing issue for the first time as the leader of this company. We have 3 family members who are part of the business now: my father, majority owner and president, myself, CEO, minority owner, and my brother, VP, minority owner. My brother and I have the same ownership stake, and the idea was that the company will transition to us, and we will be equal business partners. But my brother is undependable. My guess is that he has depression, anxiety, or some type of mental health issue that he has never addressed, and it means he's often mildly unreliable, and then, every once in a while, he drops the ball in a spectacular fashion that leaves other people to clean up his mess. We've had conversations about this on a number of occasions over the past decade, but about 3 years ago, it really seemed like he was doing much better. He was showing up, answering his phone, responding to emails, doing his job well, and actively participating in executive planning. He said he wanted to be here with me to lead our family business for the long term, and that felt wonderful. The idea of having a partner in this family business, where it can feel very high stakes and very lonely, was such a relief. My brother is smart and thoughtful, and I trust his judgment and views, which often differ from mine, which is great in a business partner. Shortly after that was when long-term plans for ownership were being put into place, and actual ownership stock started to change hands. I thought my brother and I were going to be a great team. But 18 months ago, there was an incident where he went uncommunicative for a week and left a project manager in the lurch. We had to scramble to find a subcontractor to complete our work. Eventually, he showed up and said he wouldn't do it again. And then a year ago, he left on his honeymoon, having completely failed to get a project with a hard deadline started, leaving me having to scramble to make apologies to city officials, track down materials, ask for extensions, and generally get really ticked off at my brother. Once he got back, I, in the presence of my father, told my brother that he needed to see a therapist or in some other way address his lack of dependability, or I would not go into business with him. He agreed and said he'd already talked to his doctor about getting a referral. Over the last year, I've asked a couple times if he's made any progress with getting help, but he's always said he was waiting on insurance or for an appointment, etc. Over the last month, he's gotten shaky again, being less and less responsive. Then 2 days ago, I found out he was leaving the country the next day for 2 weeks. He never told me. I found out from my mother. We once again have a project left in the lurch, making other people scramble. He left one of our crews short a member. He gave his guys only 1 workday of notice, and another employee is scheduling things that he should have scheduled. And I've come to discover that he's put off scheduling a kickoff meeting for another project for the past 3 weeks, ignoring the emails from an angry PM for the state. How do I deal with this? I know I don't want to be in business with my brother under these circumstances. I said that last year, and I meant it, and I set a boundary, and here we are, and it's time to enforce this boundary. I know all that, but I don't know what to actually do and what to actually ask for. My dad sees all this, and is supportive of me. My brother has been doing this to my dad for nearly a decade, and I think my dad is even more fed up and upset than I am. My dad is also a bit of a hothead and a dictator. He wants to straight up fire my brother. I don't know, maybe that's best? But my brother has good qualities, good skills, and he is an owner, and he is my brother. What about a PIP, a leave of absence, a change in role, take him out of leadership? Or did that ship sail last year? Part of what is so hard is that I love him, and he's falling apart at work because of very real, very challenging stuff in his personal life. The other part is, I lived the same childhood as my brother. We had an alcoholic mother, and my parents went through a terribly messy divorce. And all that created issues around communication and confrontation and self-worth and shame for all of us. Issues that I've worked hard to overcome through my own therapy and coaching. So I'm deeply empathetic to why my brother is the way he is, and I don't want to blow up my relationship with him or my sister-in-law, but I can't do it like this anymore. And ultimately, if we keep going like this, the relationship is already destroyed because I'm so frustrated and angry. And I could work with him, somehow, probably, if he would just communicate with me, if he had just told me he was going to be on vacation, that he had been ignoring these emails, that he was stalling out. But we've tried saying, Please, for the love of everything, just communicate. For nearly a decade, and nothing has changed. It's never really gotten better, except for that brief period 3 years ago. I've read through your archives, looking for family businesses hitting similar issues, and this really hit home. We're experiencing these issues, the hit to morale and people talking about leaving based on family members being treated differently. So I know we need to change, and I know there is no way to do it without this being sad and painful. Any advice you could offer to help me figure out some options to move forward that fall between keep doing what we're doing and getting the same result, and fire him as soon as he steps off the airplane would be much appreciated. My brother gets back in 2 weeks, and I need a game plan for what our conversation is going to look like. Update 3. The news is all positive, but the path there was not without its challenges. So when I wrote in, my brother had gone out on vacation without giving any notice, again, leaving me and others in the lurch. Many commenters supposed he was entitled and spoiled, making big money for doing nothing, but this couldn't be further from the truth. We're a mid-sized family business. All of us work very hard, and everyone is paid a solid livelihood, including the family owners, but no one is making Fortune 500 money. And on the other side of the coin, all the same executive pressures exist. The responsibility to keep this place going, to make the right choices so we survive a recession, survive the competition, and survive the changes in technology and workforce, and varying governmental requirements, is intense. My brother was buckling under the stress of living up to everything, not least of which was being pulled between my father's expectations and the expectations of his wife, neither of which he could meet and neither of whom he could figure out how to talk to about the reality of what he could and couldn't do. Then go ahead and add the pressure of a very successful older sister, who was his boss, to the mix. Simply put, he was freezing up and stalling out in the face of all that conflict. This is the thing about family business that nothing and no one can really prepare you for. People tell you to compartmentalize. They tell you to separate business from family. They tell you to not let the two worlds mix. But the reality is that you are sitting there, at all times, being both a daughter and a manager, a sister and a colleague, a parent and a boss, a child and a subordinate. There is no separating, no putting on different hats, no being two different people inside yourself. You're just one person, and there actually is no way to keep your family history from impacting your reactions to the other person, and no way to inure one way you have to relate to someone from impacting the other way you relate to them. When it's good, it's really good. But when it's hard, it's everything that is hard about family, combined with everything that is hard about business, which is hard indeed. So the very hard choice I made was to decide that I had to do what was best for the company, for the sake of myself and all my colleagues, and to let go of the rest. I had to be okay with losing my relationship with my brother for the sake of the business. When my brother returned from his trip, I put him on unpaid leave and told him that if he wanted to rejoin the family business, he would need to come back to a labor, field-only position without any authority. My brother is actually very talented and skilled in many ways, just not as a project manager, so keeping his skills in our workforce was in the best interest of the company, and I told him so. But I fired my brother and told him he would have to reapply for a new position because his old position no longer existed. Then, as his sister, I told him I loved him. I told him I would be happy to help him financially while he was out of work. I told him I would be happy to help him find a therapist. And I would be happy to support him and his family in any way they needed during this time, just not through the company. I tried to be there for him, even as I was the one firing him. And he was never upset with me. He saw all of it. He knew he had let everyone down. He knew why I was doing what I was doing. He left the office that day feeling even more awful and more horribly guilty about the whole situation. It took him about 6 weeks of not working, of dealing with the implications of what was happening, of finally being honest with his wife about all of it, for him to come to terms with everything. But he did. He is now regularly seeing a therapist. Ironically, my therapist, which is a good thing because she is great, and he is starting to deal with some of the baggage from our childhood. Eventually, he did come back to work. Now, day to day, he is just a mason, laying brick and block at the direction of others. He was on hiatus for a while from his ownership duties, but he is now back on our executive team, since he is still an owner and an officer, Those meetings are after hours, so they don't interfere with his field duties. It's still a little bit of a weird setup, because it's still family business. But he is doing his job well, and he is much happier now that his role matches his capabilities, and he's not constantly worried about dropping the ball or not meeting expectations, and so am I. Story 2. Aita, for getting my friend's GF arrested after she got drunk and broke things in our house. Not real names? Hi guys, this is a bit of a long story. So, for some background, a few months ago my best friend Mark, 27M, moved his girlfriend Heather, 25F, in with us. My wife, Cindy, 27F, and I, 26M, were okay with this. Mark and I have been friends since elementary school. Right before Heather moved in, she got herself pretty drunk that ended in a screaming match with her sister and throwing things at Mark. We weren't too happy with this, but Mark said he talked to her, and she wouldn't get to that point again. Well, onto the story. 2 weeks ago, we were all hanging out and having some drinks. Mark and Heather were going a little crazy, but they're adults, so whatever. Well, Cindy and I decided we were going start on dinner since Heather was pretty unintelligible, and it was like 9 p.m. Mark started also working on dinner, so I hung out in the living room while Cindy went to our room. Heather goes into their room, then she comes back out and heads outside for like 20 minutes. I asked if she was good and got a small mumble. Heather comes back in, goes into the kitchen and then back into their room again. At this point, Mark is done making their dinner and goes into their room. Mark comes out and sits with me in the living room, and we are talking about my brother's upcoming bachelor party. We then hear banging coming from their room. Mark went to go check on Heather, but she had blocked the door. He convinced her to open it, and he went in. Heather starts screaming and yelling, continuing to slam things around. After about 10 minutes of hearing Heather yelling and Mark trying to calm her down, I went in and told Heather she needed to calm down. She starts yelling some really weird and extremely racist things that I won't put here. Heather is half Hispanic, half African American BW. She starts getting louder and tearing things off the walls. I told her she needed to go outside to calm down. She refused and started picking up their bed and slamming it down. I told her if she didn't stop, we would call the cops so she could go calm down somewhere else and wasn't tearing things up. She just got louder and slammed the bed even more. I told Cindy to call the cops and tell them we needed Heather gone for the night. 2 cops show up and ask the 3 of us to step outside while they try and talk to Heather, who just continues yelling. Then it gets a little quiet, and I can see through our screen door. I see Heather try punching one of the cops. 5 minutes later, 7 more cops show up. They all run inside, and we can hear Heather screaming and yelling still. 10 minutes later, they bring her outside in one of those cop bodysuit things they use when someone is struggling and won't stop. They put her in one of the cars and are standing talking to each other. We can hear them saying that she got combative, threw stuff which hit a cop and tried hitting one of them. They cart her off and tell us themselves she is being arrested and ask if we want to press charges. Since she didn't do anything to us, we said no. The cops left and we cleaned up the mess in the living room and then hung out with Mark to make sure he was okay. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. Yes, YT for not pressing charges. Without that, Mark is going to think it's okay to have her back in your house. Even if you tell him no, he may have her around when you are not home. Mark may be your friend, but Heather is not, and who cares about Mark's feelings about your property? Is Mark going to pay for the damages his, hopefully ex, GF incurred? Without pressing charges, you'll have to sue her for damages, and a judge is going to ask why you didn't press charges. She'll certainly get jail time for trying to assault an officer and resisting arrest, but pressing charges would add to her jail time and having to compensate you for damages, and would teach her a hard lesson she needs to learn. And Mark needs a new GF. He's the AH for asking if she could move in knowing her history of violence. OP. Before the cops left, all we had noticed was the papers all over the living room and her own stuff she had trashed in their room. So, no, we didn't feel like pressing charges over some papers and her own stuff that got messed up. Commenter 2. Did you at least have her trespassed so she can't come back? Let her in with a cop standing by so she can get her stuff, then have her be gone for good. If her boyfriend doesn't like it, he can go too. OOP. She had a no-contact order placed against her by the DA, and when she comes to get her stuff, an officer will be there at the same time. Cindy got the number of the DA, so we can request that. Commenter 3. I think you should let Mark know that she has an anger issue when she drinks, and if this happens again, neither of them will be living there. He needs to realize that she needs help. If he says anything but, I agree, you might need to rethink Mark living with you. I have a feeling she will be back and will create more of a problem. OOP. I tried talking to him after he decided he was going to stay. He has past trauma from an ex-stepdad doing the same thing to his mum, but apparently Mark isn't ready to listen. I can't force him, so I have to just step back and watch him crash and burn while she steers. Any chances that Mark might be insane too? Is he going to break up with Heather? OOP. He's insane too. He's moving out with her. Commenter 4. Why would you allow this toxic shit in your life? Like WTF is this? The 90s show Cops? Get those people out of your house and out of your life. Your friend let his GF move in. Did you all discuss it first? How is he dating someone so volatile? Or is this all super normal in your neck of the woods? OOP. Obviously, I don't allow it since the cops were called and she has been banned from my house. It was discussed first and he promised he had talked to her and that she would watch her drinking and make sure she acted right. I believed him, which was a mistake. OOP responds to a downvoted commenter on drinking heavily and not being smart on how much to drink. OOP, who said regularly drinking heavily. We're adults who are allowed to have an occasional drink. My wife, and maybe had 4 drinks between us. Touch grass for Christ's sake, and maybe you should grow the F up. If you think that's heavy drinking, then maybe you have a heavy drinking problem and should reevaluate your life. Update. That blew up faster than I thought. For context, no, we didn't press charges because she only broke her own stuff and made a bit of a mess. Pressing charges was just something we didn't feel like dealing with for her breaking her own crap. I also messed up the timeline. This happened 2 weeks ago. We've had a lot going on. Sorry. Update. Heather was released the next day with a preliminary hearing set for last Thursday. We obviously spent so much time talking about what had happened. Mark said he was going to break up with Heather, and spent that whole first week saying that. Then last week he said he isn't going to break up with her. I told him that's his choice, albeit a stupid one, but she is not allowed back at the house at all, and he said he understood. 2 days before the preliminary hearing, Cindy and Mark are subpoenaed to court. Sadly, I wasn't, so this part is second-hand from Cindy. Cindy told me that because it's a felony, the judge is passing the case on to district court from magistrate. I guess the DA went up to Cindy and Mark and said they could offer Heather a plea deal where she would basically be on probation with mandated therapy and mandated AA. Now whether the district judge accepts that is anyone's guess. I talked with Mark that night after I got off work and he said they had a long talk after that and are staying together but won't be attached at the hip. Mark also said Heather doesn't remember anything after we stopped hanging out. He has spent every day since then with her, but that's his thing, so I don't really care. Cindy and I were out of town this past weekend, and we noticed on our doorbell camera that her car was magically gone at the same time Mark's was gone. I confronted him and he insisted she never went inside, and our doorbell doesn't show she went in. Cindy and I talked and were ready to kick him out too. We had another talk last night, and he is moving out because they are finding a place together. We also told Mark we wanted an apology even if Heather didn't think she deserved it. I also confronted Mark because he was saying at my brother's bachelor party that Heather didn't deserve it and the cops didn't need to be called. Which is highly inappropriate at any type of event, but especially that one. Heather has been telling Mark that she was trying to leave and go to her brother's. She walked outside the one time and came back in with nobody trying to stop her. She also said that I started a confrontation with her, and that's why she went off the rails. I called bullshit because why would we try to stop her from leaving, unless it was in a car, and we also asked how the hell she knows this if she was supposedly so blackout that she doesn't remember anything. Mark claims he doesn't remember anything until after the cops left, which is crap because we talked about what happened multiple times over the days after this occurred. He's just being an idiot and we won't be dealing with it anymore. Either way, both are moving out. Heather isn't allowed back except to get her stuff, and we will have an officer there when she is there. Editor's note, OOP, attached a picture of the hearing case report. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. If she doesn't remember anything, how does she know those things about the incident? Mark is in a toxic relationship and I hope he will leave before it's too late. OOP. That's exactly what I said when we talked to him. He said she's remembering things, and according to Mark, he doesn't remember anything until after the cops came. OOP clarifies on the court process. OOP: we live in a small town, and it was a preliminary appearance. Also, like I said, it was moved to district court instead of magistrate, so his next trial isn't until October at the earliest. Will Mark be allowed to come back to Oop's house? OOP: he won't be allowed back. Why did Oop let Mark move in with him and Cindy? OOP: because we rent. Mark and I were renting before I met Cindy. Cindy and I are about to move out of state, so we didn't see a reason to not keep renting together to save money. Commenter 2: thank you for the update. I am sorry for all the felonious behavior. Comment 3: there are so many weird parts to this. First paragraph, he describes an incident where she drank too much and got violent. Then describes how they were all drinking, but he just shrugged it off about her because she's harmless, right? What? You just told us about how dangerous she got from being drunk. Second, more an aside, but when he mentioned he went to their room to tell her to calm down, as if that has ever actually helped someone calm down in human history. Lol. Third, she attacks the cops, and is so crazy they needed 7 of them to arrest her, and they're asking Oop after if he wants to press charges. I'd have thought her assaulting some cops would have made that part irrelevant. But the fact they also chose not to press charges is batty. And then the whole mess after with the fallout. I'm glad he and his GF acted to have her kept away from their house, but he sounded so. Not that emotional either way about it. Until the end, when he sounded pissed off. Before, he may as well have been narrating a documentary about sponges.